I was talking to a youth group back in the day, and we were doing a Q&A session, and one question that came up anonymously was, is it okay for young girls to dress in a feminine sort of way? And I answered, well, not just yes, but absolutely so, right? So certainly we're called to respect the principle of modesty, and hopefully that goes without saying, but at the same time, the underlying point is that women, they're called to portray to the world the beauty of the feminine person in all its glory, spiritually, intellectually, physically, as a means of giving glory to God. And funny enough, one of the best ways to articulate this particular point is found in today's gospel. It's the Gospel of Matthew chapter 22. Two categories of people come to the Lord, the Pharisees and the Herodians, and they ask him, is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? In their minds, it's a binary option. So either he says yes, and so he seems like a traitor to his own people, favoring the emperor as opposed to them, or he says no, and it seems like he's stirring up a rebellion. But the Lord, as is typical, he creates his own option, right? So he doesn't swing at every pitch. He creates a third option. So he says, give me a coin. They produce a coin. He asks them, whose image is on this coin? And you have to say, Caesar's, the image of the emperor. And he has a famous line, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. Now, just to be clear, this particular passage from the Gospel of Matthew chapter 22, it's not about simply this exhortation to pay your taxes. The Lord wouldn't waste a story simply on that. It's also not about separation of church and state. Sometimes you hear that as well. Even though it sounds strange, this story, this particular gospel text, is about Christian iconography. And you know that because of the wording of the narrative. So again, give me a coin. Whose image is on this coin? People in the day would have picked up right away that this is an allusion to the book of Genesis. Specifically when we hear that we are made in the image and likeness of God. So Christopher West, this really big theology of the body guy, he further expounds upon this point in great detail. So I'm going to rely heavily on his thoughts in this regard, right? So going back to the book of Genesis, you hear that God is the creator of all things. And we also know that God is good. And what that means is that everything God creates is good. And more to the point, everything God creates is an icon, a window, if you will, into God's goodness. Everything which is beautiful and good and true in this world reveals something about God's heart. Now, on top of that, what you also hear in the book of Genesis with regards to human beings is that they are very good. So God creates a bunch of things in the aftermath of which he says, this is good, this is good, this is good. But when it comes to Adam and Eve, human beings are very good. And what's more, we hear that before the fall, before the advent of original sin, Adam and Eve are naked and unafraid. So you put it all together, what this means is that the most powerful icon of the invisible God, the most powerful icon of God's heart, Adam and Eve, naked and unafraid. Adam and Eve, vulnerable, but secure in their vulnerability. That, my friends, is the most powerful icon of God's heart. Now you pause on that and you think about the devil. So these things, the beautiful things in this world which are meant to be windows to the divine life, the devil twists these things, convinces us to become mesmerized by the windows themselves. And so instead of becoming icons, they're actually idols. And Christopher West says, in a certain sense, that's the source of all dysfunction in the moral realm, right? This idea of turning what's supposed to be an icon into an idol. Now, obviously, it begs the question, what's the way forward, right? So right off the bat, to be clear about avoiding two extremes. So you don't want to go the way of the addict. The way of the addict is like self-indulgence, right? But also, you don't want to go the way of the Stoic. The Stoic tries to shun material things, tries to shun beautiful things in this world. Certainly, there's an enduring value when it comes to what we might call asceticism, right? So taming the wild heart by way of a healthy self-denial, avoiding occasions of sin. But the real solution when it comes to this issue is recovering this notion of no in favor of a greater yes. No in favor of a greater yes. Sometimes when it comes to the Christian life, we stop at like no, full stop, right? So no to this, no to that, all these prohibitions. But it's always purposeful. You can't forget context. So no to lust, no to idolatry, no to objectification, no to sin, obviously. But at the same time, yes to what? Yes to restoration. Yes to the restoration of the original Christian iconography of the beautiful things in this world. I'll give you a couple examples just to kind of flesh it out, right? So the first example is from the life of Christopher West. So Christopher West was being really generous in this regard, right? So he was sharing a story from his youth. So apparently as a young boy, after school, he would always go to the mall and go to this particular store, which had a poster of this really famous supermodel, Christy Brinkley. And so he would go every day to look at this poster, just gaze at it, stare at this poster. And later on, when he was an adult, he was praying before the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament, and the Lord was like, you know what, I want to take you back to this memory. As a starting point, Christy Brinkley's body is not bad, it's not evil, it's not wicked. To think otherwise is to fall into the heresy of Manichaeism. So Manichaeism is this ancient heresy which says that the spirit is good, and the material, especially the human body, is bad. We don't believe that as a Christian people. It's very important to grasp that as a starting point. But on top of that, more to the point, the invitation was to recover the original iconography of this person's beauty. So yeah, don't lust after her. Don't make her into an object. Don't reduce her to an object for your pleasure. But at the same time, don't stop there. Recover the original purpose of beauty. She is meant to be an icon. She is meant to be a window which is meant to lead you to rest in the divine mystery. Okay, one final example, I'll end with this. This is kind of longer, but I think you'll like it. So, parable of the prodigal son, Gospel of Luke, chapter 15. So you probably know the story, but just to make sure we're on the same page. So there's this father, obviously emblematic of God. He has two sons. One's younger, one's older. The younger son goes to the father, give me the share of the property owed unto me. In other words, I don't care about you, I don't care about our relationship, I just care about the inheritance. So just like die already so I can get the inheritance owed unto me. It's kind of insulting, but the father gives him the share of the property unto him. He goes off to faraway lands, loses his share in the property and loose living, prostitutes and whatnot, realizes he's hungry, remembers his father has money and food, so goes back to his father. Father has this big feast, celebrates, kills a fatted calf, invites everyone to celebrate, including the elder son. Elder son, though, is really upset. He has that line, I've slaved for you all these years, and you never given my friends and I even a young goat to celebrate with, and yet you kill the fatted calf for this kid, this son of yours. So no, I'm not going to join the party. Right? And with that, the story basically ends. Now, in light of what we're talking about today, hopefully you can see a certain symbolism here. So the younger son is emblematic of the addict. So why does he run away from home? It's not simply because of his hunger. It's because he doesn't trust God. The reason why he goes off to a faraway land, he doesn't trust that God the Father can satisfy his hunger. I don't believe you can satisfy my passion. I don't believe you can make me happy. So I go elsewhere. I go to a faraway land and I self-indulge in prostitutes and whatnot. So going the way of the addict, going the way of self-indulgence. Now you pause that, right? So you think about what brings him back. Same hunger. It's kind of interesting. Now you think about the elder son. Elder son in a certain sense represents a stoic. I shun the material. I shun beautiful things in this world. And so I've reduced the Christian life to what we might call legalism. The Christian life is all about following rules and regulations. I've forgotten that the whole point of life is to share in God's blessed life. I forgot that I'm called to be free, to be happy, to be joyful, and to pass on that life to other people. I've forgotten about that, as a result of which I'm angry, and I'm bitter, and I'm cruel. And I refuse to enter into the feast, which is emblematic of the kingdom of heaven. And that's why St. Augustine has this really great line. He says, those who are lost in their passions are less lost than people who have lost their passion. People who are lost in their passions are less lost than people who have lost their passion. Because the first category of people, they haven't lost their hunger. They haven't abandoned their hearts. Whereas if you've lost your passion, you've forgotten the whole point of the game. And that's again where you become angry and bitter and cruel. So you put it together, what's the takeaway message? Is to do two things in parallel. First of all, even though it sounds weird, stay hungry. Stay hungry. Never abandon your hearts. It's good that you're searching. The one who searches finds. The one who knocks, the door will be opened. But the second thing is be honest about what actually satisfies your hunger. If you're sincere about both things, ultimately you'll find God. It's a matter of trusting Christian anthropology. St. Augustine, right? The heart is truly restless until it rests in the Lord. And once you discover that, it's kind of interesting. Everything comes back to you. You come to rediscover enjoyment of the beautiful things in this world for what they're always meant to be, icons as opposed to idols. And what's more, when you bring yourself back into right relationship with God, you yourself become this radiant and beautiful icon of the invisible God.